I was just going to say there is a lot to unpack because there's certain areas that favor each one in different ways. So I think a big part of this argument and a big part of the verdict is really going to come from what we value the most from these. You know, do we value the targets? Do we value the air yards? Do we value the touchdowns? Like, what are we valuing the most to make our decision on which of these wide receivers is going to finish the fantasy season better and be better for us?
What's up, Guff Gang? We're back in action. Yes. Joey Marino, Zach Maziar's dancing. And we're still without James Reiner. He is still...
It's pretty sad, James. So, or James's case, he was supposed to be back actually today, from his father's butt operation, but they gave his father 2 left cheeks, and so now they're having to redo. So it's a shame.
It's slight tough, miscalculation.
No, yeah.
Unfortunately, we've seen that quite a few many times.
At least 11 times.
Yes.
Yeah,
but hey, one way to help speed up that operation and to get James back is to subscribe.
One way to crack this.
But yes, that's how it works, folks. We don't make the rules. We're just slaves to the almighty algorithm. But be sure to subscribe if you like this kind of fantasy content. It's juicy, it's entertaining, it's informative. It's basically cable news here for you.
Lemon scented.
Yes, it is. But today, yet again, yes, we are back in the fantasy showdown arena. And we are taking 2 wide receivers from the Minnesota Vikings and pitting them against each other. That's right. We've got Mr. Adam Thielen versus Mr. Rookie Justin Jefferson. Are we ready
to
get into the showdown? I think it might.
It's going to get hot.
Folks, be sure to bring a towel and get some water because there's some hot takes are about to be dropped right here.
Oh, yeah.
Are we ready?
Let's do this. Ooh, I'm just another kind of girl. Oh, sorry.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, Guff Gang. But you may not see that.
Every time someone says, "Are you ready?" I think of the Zoe 101 theme song. No.
Zoe.
Right.
Wait, is that in the theme song?
Yeah. They say, "Are you ready?" They started off. I'm pretty sure. I really hope so.
BCA Academy. Oh, man.
Oh, we're going to learn today.
Well, I think it's time to go to school on these 2 wide receivers.
Oh, yeah.
Let me give you the facts, the straight facts. Adam Thielen is currently the wide receiver 12 on the season. Out of 58 targets he's received, he's caught 37 of them for 480 yards, 13 yards per catch, with 7 touchdowns. He is projected to receive 116 targets, 74 receptions, 960 yards, 13 yards per catch, and 14 touchdowns. He is averaging 14 fantasy points per game and is scoring 2.32 points per target. Another thing, he has a 29.1% target share. That's Adam Thielen for you. Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 21 on the season, 44 targets, 34 receptions, 627 yards. He's averaging 18.4 yards per catch and has 3 touchdowns. He's projected to have 88 targets, 68 receptions, 1,254 yards, 18.4 yards per catch, and 6 touchdowns. He is averaging 15 fantasy points per game and 2.63 points per target. And he has a 22% target share. Those are the car facts for you. Zach, what do you think of these two cars? I mean, these two players.
Wow. Well, these are hot rods.
Yes.
All right. Interesting. Okay. So a couple of things that I wanted to look into was the air yards between the two. So we got two really good receivers here. One, it's weird too because there's no middle ground. One is the seasoned veteran who's been in the offense for a while, and one is the fresh rookie who is having a breakout season. So two opposite sides of the spectrum. So looking at Thielen's snap share, he's in like 96% of the plays compared to Justin Jefferson's 79%. Adam Thielen's averaging or has 728 air yards on the season, which Justin Jefferson's got 481. Looking at the numbers, I mean, they're all fairly consistent. Thielen, you said, Joey, he's got 7 touchdowns on the season, which is actually ranked number 2 in the league right now. So it feels like he has a pretty high ceiling a lot of times. We saw it last year. We saw or have seen it a couple games this year where he's able to have like a really blowout game for you. But on the flip side of that, we've also seen a couple of duds. Justin Jefferson, all of his stats, all of those are really good stats. I can't believe he's projected for 1,000 something yards on the season, because really he's played all season, but he didn't really start his breakout till about week 3. So we can kind of chalk up week 1 and 2 as duds almost, because really he hadn't gotten a lot of involvement yet. So to start your breakout at week 3 is very good, I would say, as a rookie wide receiver, because usually we see that kind of mid-season, maybe later season, where the rookie wide receivers start to take form a little bit. So one thing I did want to look into, though, the yards per target. This one actually kind of got to me a little bit. So, the yards per target, I'm actually not sure what Thielen is averaging right now in terms of his yards per target, but Justin Jefferson is averaging 14.1 yards per target, which is number 3 in the season. So that to me is very good. That to me shows that, like, the air yards I get, there's a big difference, but like I said, it took about 2 weeks for Justin Jefferson to actually kind of break out. I think a lot of the numbers are skewed a little bit. Even saying they're skewed, still the projections show Justin Jefferson's going to finish ahead of Thielen in a lot of the categories. But even then, looking at the numbers now, they can be skewed based on the first 2 weeks where Justin Jefferson kind of wasn't really a thing. But that yards per target, 14.1, that's absurd. Now, I know that Thielen is currently beating Justin Jefferson in terms of the actual targets he's getting, which does make sense. I mean, Thielen is like we said, the veteran wide receiver. He's the go-to. He plays slot a good bit of the time. So I could see him getting a good bit of the target share because that's just understandable. But in terms of fantasy points per that target, so you have the yards per target, 14.1, but fantasy points per target, Justin Jefferson's averaging 2.63. So right now, Adam Thielen's averaging 0.6 per route run. So it's not, I don't know, like Thielen, he just seems so reliable, so trustworthy, and yet a lot of these numbers are leaning favorably towards Justin Jefferson, even with those 2 weeks kind of out. So I don't know. I know the touchdowns aren't there. Thielen seems like he's kind of more of the touchdown hog. And the targets are favoring Thielen too. So there's a lot to kind of unpack here. What were you about to say something?
If you want to finish, go ahead.
I was just going to say there is a lot to unpack because there's certain areas that favor each one in different ways. So I think a big part of this argument and a big part of the verdict is really going to come from what we value the most from these. Do we value the targets? Do we value the air yards? Do we value the touchdowns? Like, what are we valuing the most to make our decision on which of these wide receivers is going to finish the fantasy season better and be better for us?
Yeah, I think you said it best right there. This is closer than I think most people would think. because you've got Thielen, who, like you said, is the vet. He's kind of the target hog and pretty consistent. And then you get Justin Jefferson, who is more of a boom-bust guy with very high highs, but also some very low lows. Jefferson, he has 2 games where he absolutely exploded. A 27-point game against Tennessee and a 35-point game against Atlanta. But he's also had some 3, 4, and 5-point games. And I think his fantasy points per game, I think they're a little inflated. I think due to those 35 and 27-point games, he also had 103 yards against Houston, so he had a 12-point game. He's only had 3 games where he scored double-digit points. That's what kind of worries me in terms of consistency. And when you say the things that you value, that's what it's going to come down to. It's tough because Adam Thielen is a guy that you drafted. His ADP was like the 3rd round, and he's a wide receiver 1, or he's like a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. You probably drafted him as a wide receiver 1. And Justin Jefferson, he's a waiver pickup that you just grabbed off of waivers in like week 2 or week 3 or something to spot start. And now he's turned into a pretty decent wide receiver 2, or what could be wide receiver 3. We actually talked about this on one of our last videos in terms of top waiver ads. Justin Jefferson was, I think, number 3 on that list, just because he exploded in those games. And that's the thing. He has the potential to blow up again in future matchups. They've got Dallas, they've got Jacksonville, New Orleans, Detroit, all decent matchups for wide receivers. And he also has Adam Thielen to draw double coverage off of him. I mean, Thielen will get the best corner matchups probably. He'll get the double coverage, which leaves room for Justin Jefferson. What it comes down to is, one, okay, let's be real. This offense runs through Dalvin Cook. He is, like you said in another video, he is the engine. Yes, he is the engine of this offense.
He is the Atlas.
Right. And the other thing is they're both tied to Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins has been very inconsistent this year. He's been really good in some games, and even when he's really good, he still isn't great. He still throws a pick 6 against Atlanta where he scores, I think, like 30 points or 35 points in that game. They're both tied to Kirk Cousins, and right now Kirk Cousins is kind of hyper-targeting Adam Thielen. He's had 9 red zone targets, and those touchdowns, that's 6 points in the bank for you right there, plus either a half point or a full point if you're playing PPR league. Those touchdowns are gold, but Jefferson can kind of do the same thing, but for less draft capital and for less catches. He's averaging more yards per target and more air yards. It's close.
I would say trade capital too. Like, I mean, Thielen, just name value. Thielen has been very good for us the last couple of years. So, in terms of trading or in terms of getting one of these players on your teams as well, I feel like Justin Jefferson, even though he has had that breakout campaign, he's a lot cheaper to get than Thielen, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah,
if you offer somebody for Thielen, it probably would take a lot compared to if you offer the same for Justin Jefferson. They might actually accept it because in everybody's mind, everyone does know, as good as Justin Jefferson's been, he was a waiver pickup. Like, there was no heavy draft capital, which we are getting mid-season to where people probably shouldn't be leaning too much more into the draft capital of, I spent a first rounder on this. Like, yeah, you might have spent a first rounder on Zeke, but he is definitely not first round value in redraft leagues right now. So
sadly not. We're
getting to the point where that's not as big of a thing, but yeah, the price tag was a lot different between these two. So
what do you think the discrepancy in price and trade value of these two is?
I don't know.
Or I guess a better question is, like, who would you trade to get Adam Thielen? Who would you trade away?
Oh, man. It depends. Because I don't really like the 1-for-1, like trading a wide receiver for a wide receiver. So let's see. If we think about running back and wide receiver duo, maybe, I would say like a DJ Chark and I don't know, who's a good running back to pair with DJ Chark?
Let's go. David Montgomery, maybe?
He's kind of good. He's got a favorable playoff schedule.
He does. His production has been great.
I would go to
David
get Thielen.
Johnson.
I would actually go to get Thielen, Todd Gurley, and DJ Chark.
I was thinking Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley's schedule is not looking too good going forward. I think you could sell high on him right now from his consistency he's had. But that's one of the things. That's what I'm saying. If you tell me, okay, Todd Gurley and DJ Chark for Thielen, I'd say, yep, I would do that. Thielen's got the name value. If you say Todd Gurley and DJ Chark for Justin Jefferson, would you do that? Like, he doesn't have the established name value yet to where I might be a lot more hesitant. Exactly. So
I don't think I'm doing the Gurley and Chark trade for Thielen either, though. I think that's too much. I think Gurley is a little too much. I would go either David Johnson or David Montgomery. One of the Davids.
I like the Davids. I would rather have the Davids than the Gurley. But
the girly man.
But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think going forward with the schedule too, though. So one thing that could impact them, and this is just together, is Dalvin Cook's usage. We've seen him get a lot more carries these last two games, and that's actually come at their expense. I think Thielen last week had about 4 fantasy points in half PPR leagues. Justin Jefferson about 7. So we see the yards per target there with Justin Jefferson. He's able to get 3 more points than Thielen just because his yards per target's a lot greater. But yeah, that was the last 2 weeks they haven't done well, and those were the 2 weeks that they've been cooking with Cook. So are we afraid moving forward in the season? Because, I mean, they've been using Cook and utilizing him well, but I don't know. Are we afraid that they're figuring things out to where both these wide receivers might not actually have that much of an opportunity because it really is going through Cook?
Well, I think it depends on some matchup, too. Dalvin Cook has basically been matchup proof this whole year, aside from injury. But still, it's something you want to consider. They've got New Orleans and Tampa Bay, Chicago, and I think Carolina is actually pretty good against running backs, too. All on the schedule, which means
Carolina's not good against running back.
Oh, no, excuse me, not Carolina.
Carolina's like number 28 against running backs.
Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking of some other I don't know who I was thinking of. Not
Chicago?
Carolina.
Did you say Chicago?
I did say Chicago. They got Chicago twice. So Chicago, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans are all pretty good against running backs.
Yep.
So that means they may depend a little bit more on the pass. It may open it up. I don't think they're going to necessarily depend upon the pass because it's kind of hard to depend on a struggling Kirk Cousins this year. But that's a good point because that means you need to do more with the passes you're given.
Yes.
And in that case, it looks like Justin Jefferson's doing a little bit more than Adam Thielen in this and with his catches. So
yeah, Thielen's getting the targets and has more of the touchdown opportunity. But if you're saying Cook is going to dominate and he is going to take over these games, then it kind of does come down to how if you can get the targets, but if you're getting a couple yards per target, that's a lot less valuable than getting 14 yards for one target. So yeah, I guess that's one of the biggest arguments is, do we think moving forward they're going to keep dominating with Cook to where both of these receivers have to kind of get the scraps? Or do we think that was a couple of games, that it was kind of in the game scripts, they were riding him out, but moving forward, we don't see that as much? I think that's a huge, huge argument against the verdict.
It might be. But I think, are we ready to make a verdict then? You go first this time. I went first last time.
So, okay. Okay. All right.
Come on.
So, all right. So the last 2 games, the Vikings have played Green Bay and they've played the Detroit Lions.
Correct.
The number 31 and 32 run defenses in the league. Okay.
Also correct.
All right. I don't think anyone's afraid of Kirk Cousins. Okay.
Also correct.
Maybe around Halloween time, if he dresses up like something scary, they might be afraid. So with that being said, with them having played, and the Green Bay, they don't play again. They don't play the Lions again. So basically,
they do play the Lions again.
Do they?
Mm-hmm. One more time.
This week. It's week 17.
Correct.
Yeah, it's week 17. So depending on your fantasy season, 17. It is week 17.
Is it?
Yeah. So depending on your fantasy
Okay.
season, you may actually have like championships week 16 and 17. In our leagues, we have it go until week 16. So we will not reap the benefits of Dalvin Cook playing then. But even then, it's the last game of the season. If they're not in playoff contention, they might not even play him that much. So that's one reason. If that's not a rule in your league, maybe try and make it to where you stop week 16. But moving on. So yeah, he's gotten those two really easy matchups out of the way. So moving forward, they do have a couple of good run game matchups, but they're not that great. I don't think anyone's afraid of Kirk Cousins. So I think after seeing these two games where Dalvin Cook just dominates, teams are basically getting game script around Dalvin Cook. They're going to say, Dalvin Cook's the one we take out. Once we take him out, Kirk Cousins will have to have to throw the ball. Teams have beaten them, Kirk Cousins throwing the ball, or them having to play from behind and Kirk Cousins throwing the ball. So with that being said, and I'm actually changing my verdicts kind of mid
Oh, the pivot.
show. Yeah,
The
I'm
pivot.
pivoting.
Yes.
I originally
Pivot.
thought Justin Jefferson because I thought, okay, he's making the most opportunity with the limited amount of targets. Adam Thielen's getting the targets. He has a highest chance of touchdowns, but I thought, Justin Jefferson's going to make more opportunity happen, and Cook's going to just dominate the rest of the season. I do think Cook's going to dominate the rest of the season, but I do not see the level of production he has had the last two games the rest of the season. The beginning of the season, he dominated still, but we still saw these two having great games. So give me Adam Thielen. He's got more targets in him. I think teams are going to game plan more around Dalvin Cook. He does not have an super easy schedule moving forward, especially in fantasy playoffs. So I think Kirk Cousins will have to throw the ball. And I think he is going to go to old reliable Adam Thielen. He's got the more targets on the season. He's got more touchdowns on the season. His air yards and snap share are greater. So give me the guy who's done it before. Give me the guy who's going to get more targets because I think that Kirk Cousins is going to be forced to throw the ball more. So I say Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I'm going to make this short and sweet, and yeah, I'm going with Adam Thielen too. The target share, the red zone looks, the touchdowns, it's really hard to overlook. He's playing like a wide receiver one. He's got a 29% target share. That's insane. And yes, I think Justin Jefferson can break off a big one, and he's getting more done on fewer passes. But I still like the touchdowns out of Adam Thielen. I think he's a solid wide receiver, low-end wide receiver one, high-end wide receiver two. And I think he'll finish probably as a wide receiver one this year.
I was really, really, I had Justin Jefferson typed out because I own Dalvin Cook in several leagues, and I thought this is going to be the Dalvin Cook show. And the lower point games from Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson were what we were going to see moving forward. But just looking at the schedule, I don't see it. I see Dalvin Cook still doing well. Like I see him having 20-point games, something like that. But
not 40.
Exactly. The last two games, he's had 5 rushing touchdowns, and I think like a receiving touchdown too. So I'm sorry, where else are touchdowns supposed to go if Dalvin Cook's getting that many? He's not going to have that many touchdowns the rest of the season. So in like a single game, or just spread out, I guess. So yeah. If that's the case, they're going to have to go to somebody. Adam Thielen's got more touchdowns. What did you say his touchdown targets or red zone targets are again?
He had 9 so far in the season.
Yeah. So give me Adam Thielen, who's got more targets and he's got a greater chance of a touchdown. Granted that Dalvin Cook does not get the touchdown.
So that is going to do it for today's show. In the case of Thielen versus Jefferson, it was decided in favor of Mr. Adam Thielen 2-0. If James were here, I think he'd go Justin Jefferson.
I think he might actually.
I think he would too. He's a Jefferson owner, isn't he?
He is, and I think he's pretty high on him. So I actually think he would go Justin Jefferson.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Justin Jefferson's still a good wide receiver, but he's not as good as Adam Thielen. So that is going to do it for today's show. Be sure to leave a comment below on who you think we should put in the fantasy arena next. We want to know who you have questions about. Is it Lamar Jackson? Is it Deshaun Watson? Maybe we've already done a show on them. I don't know. Maybe check it out up there.
Second. I know what's happening.
But yeah, don't leave a comment about them. Leave a comment about any player that you feel is deemed necessary or worthy to enter the arena. But be sure to like and subscribe. be sure to grow up and go get guffed.